Oh, hello?
All right,
Hello.
folks. This is Laren with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. I am here with three of the most prolific token makers for VTT and such. I have Jan Loos, and I
Hello.
have Darkwoulfe Riley,
Hey,
and I have Devin Night.
Hello.
And we have some community members here that have joined us as well. At the end, we'll open up questions. We sort of have a format that we're going to try to stick with in regards to, how these individuals got started, that sort of thing. It's been a ride. I've done some pretty cool shows. I've never done a token symposium before, so this is our first time for doing this. However, I've done other events similar. I used to do, or I do every couple of years. I do Mapper's Delight, which is obviously cartography, and then we've done other celebrity type guests, or what guests, like industry guests, I guess if you want to call it. And it's great to have you guys here because I'm a big fan. I collect all y'all's tokens, and I know that many of the community members here either own or have your tokens as well. And then the other idea of this is to obviously to promote whatever content that you have, and I know all three of you have content that's separate from Fantasy Grounds, and then you all have content that is part of Fantasy Grounds. So so we're going to go down this list here. I'm going to start with Darkwoulfe. You're the first one in the line here. So there are some marked questions that I had asked you about early on.
oh, I was supposed to remember those.
Yeah, well, that's okay. So these are I'll read them down, and then
Thank you.
we'll go
Thank
down
you.
that. Yeah, I'm just letting you know I'm going to start with those questions and go from there. All right. So first question of the day or the evening, and as you're doing that, I'm going to let's see. We're going to pull up some images, hopefully. So let me go into this graphic that you shared with me earlier, and what this is a preview of some of the work that you've done. I'm going to pull that up before we get into it fully. That way we can kind of get an idea of what you're discussing. Helping to make this event go. It's not easy to organize all these things, and it really helps to have the support of like Marswhip here. He's been with us for quite a while, so I'm grateful for that. And let me do a screen share.
Yeah, this seems like a monumental undertaking.
It can be, because there's just tons of different things that can go wrong, or let's see. So we have a preview, and if you guys take a look at the live screen here, you able to see that?
Yeah,
Yep.
These were some of my first tokens in the pack I was talking about that Doug let me put on the Fantasy Grounds store.
Mm-hmm.
And I've updated them for a pack that's going to be coming out soon, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
But I've come a long way with learning how to use Dash 3D with the platform I use.
Mm-hmm.
And I do encourage anybody to use it to try to make a token. It's I think when I talked to Devin back when I saw him at Gen Con, he said he used Poser at first.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just dress up the paper dolls however you want. And you can hit render, and you can put shaders on them. You can make them look as realistic or as comic book like, whatever your style is. But yeah, when I first started, I didn't know how to make metal look like metal.
Yeah, that's
looked
hard.
good to me.
Yeah. Water's difficult too.
Yeah. Oh man. I tackled water elementals. I thought I was gonna pull my hair out. Not that I have any.
I hear you.
Yeah. So I feel like I've come a long way. I feel like I got a long way to go, and I'm gonna keep cranking them out as long as I can because I have fun doing them. I've come a long way from using, I think I used Pogs back in the first VTT I used was one that was sponsored by WotC. I can't remember the name of it though, but it was part of the tool set. It came with 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
And I had a player, and she kept telling me you should look at Daz. You should look at Daz, because I found out that they sell you these Pogs to go with their ATT, and you could kind of do a little bit of hacking to some whatever art you wanted in there. And I started using top-down tokens from a site that was called, I want to say RPG Maker or something like that.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of guys using like Poser to make different types of tokens, and I really liked them, but I was cutting them up with like a Photoshop program to make them use them in my game. And that's how I got started with making these.
So you just evolved in from your own games into this kind of thing?
Yeah. All these started from my game. Most of these are my players or people I was throwing against my players.
Huh. How long do you think you've been in the industry? Like, not just for making tokens, but I mean, I should say, how long you've been gaming?
Oh, gaming?
Yeah.
My first experience was in 1980. I was away for a computer camp at Michigan Technical University. And I was staying over the weekend, and I wandered into this room that had all these wood panel walls and a big pane glass window, storming outside. And these guys were like, okay, you walk into a cave. We make the half orc go first. I was like, what are they talking about? Piercers begin to drop from the ceiling. So I had a seat. I had to pull up a chair. What is going on here?
That's funny.
So that was my first taste of role playing, and I've been hooked ever since.
All right, so let's see. Go ahead.
I said, I'm not sure what system they were playing, but yeah, I came home and I was like, I want to find some D&D stuff.
I hear you. Did you try other systems?
Right now I'm in a Pathfinder game. As far as fantasy, I think Pathfinder and D&D are about it. There was one I played, but I don't know what the name of that system was. The DM under that never let us see the books.
Ah, I see.
It was
old school
a
there.
weird campaign. He would like Xerox papers and cut stuff out if we wanted to know. It was really secretive.
Wow.
Hey Darkwoulfe, I've got a question. So this is me, Jan, online tabletop. For those listening, hey. So you've been using Daz all the time, or you said you used Poser program before?
No, I've always used Daz, but when I met Devin, he was telling me about Poser.
Right. Yeah. I love Daz. I use Daz as well.
Use Daz too. Okay.
Yeah. I use it basically to pose my my characters before dressing them and sketching over them.
Oh, you sketch over them? Okay.
Yeah.
I am not that good of an artist. I wish I was, but that helps me out. It helps me get my my imagination into a tangible asset.
Yeah, but it's a good program. I love it as well.
Yeah.
There's some freaky stuff on there as well. If you look at so basically DAS has an internal marketplace just like Fantasy Grounds has, where you can buy assets for within DAS and you can add it to your characters, or they modify your characters. But there's some pretty nightmare fuel in there as well on that marketplace. Like some people that make some really interesting, weird characters.
Yeah. There's a few other sites, like I call them dark DAS sites too.
Yeah, I know what you mean, I think.
Yeah.
The unofficial ones.
Right. Like, whoa.
All right. So let's move on to the next contestant here. Similar kind of questions. I kind of liked the way he answered organically. It wasn't so robotic. I think that was great. Devin, what do you think? Where would you start?
Making tokens?
Yeah.
I started back with the previous owners of Fantasy Grounds.
Mm-hmm.
When I found it, they had just those pogs that come with it now, the 1, 2, 3 in the alphabet,
Right.
and the round pogs, and you could drop that on. And because I wanted to play with my brother who was in Iowa, like Fantasy Grounds, when I found out, I'm like, this is awesome. I can go back to playing with my brother who's a long way away.
Mm-hmm.
And when I opened up the graphics, I'm like, oh, okay, so I guess my brother is the M, and I'll get to be the P this session. And it just so happened that outside of gaming, I was working in a different company. I'd done some web design, and PNGs were kind of like the new thing at the time. And that transparency, as I was making headlines for websites, I'm like, you can make pretty much any graphic with like no background. And so I sat down one day and I sketched up like a goblin, which was just one circle on top of another circle with some little stick arms.
Yeah.
And he was completely goofy looking. But I dropped him into Fantasy Grounds, and I showed him to a couple people, and I moved him around the map, and you could rotate him and stuff, so he was facing different directions. And they're like, that's actually pretty good. And I'm like, I wonder if I actually spent like a couple minutes and actually drew like a little nose and a couple eyeballs, and instead of stick arms, if I actually drew, kind of thick kind of arms, and then put a little cape on it or a shield or a sword. I'm like, so I started goofing around with that. And if you look at my early stuff, it's about that complex. It's pretty much a couple circles on top of each other with like a little stick sword and a little round shield. But when you dropped them on the map, it kind of just made them like really become something, because, a lot of gamers at the time, and still, the imagination makes so much more out of something that's very simple. So if you have a little green blob on the thing and you say, that's a slime, all of a sudden people's imagination is like, oh yeah, they're like, I can see that thing moving and bubbling and stuff. And I'm like, it's just a simple green blob, but like, go for it, use your imagination and stuff. So they started off so simple, but year after year after year, I'm just like, I gotta push it a little bit further. I gotta make it a little bit nicer. I gotta make it more representative of the creature and stuff. And over time, I've developed, kind of the new look, which is probably, for all tastes and purposes, probably way too much detail and stuff. But that's just where I'm at now.
Yeah. Are you working with any other projects that are related in the industry? Like, are you still working on those? Was it Kobold Press books?
The Creature Codex. I need to run into Wolfgang at Gen Con, hopefully, because I've been licensing the use of the art to create the tokens, and the last 5-6 times I've emailed him, he hasn't gotten them, or he hasn't had time to respond to them. So I'm hoping to run into him and get this thing resolved. But since I launched the Patreon, and I'm still taking commissions. I haven't had a whole lot of time to like set aside for Creature Codex, but I would love to actually finish it just so I can say I'm done with that, because the Kobold Press, the Tome of Beasts is completely done, and Creature Codex is maybe 1/4 of the way done. And I would like to actually just finish it, but I can't move ahead until I get a chance to talk to Wolfgang and make sure everything's on the level and everything's good with him still.
Right. Well, that's just, it's one of those things about business.
Yeah, and I know he's been super busy. I mean, all the products they're releasing they're amazing and stuff, but they're, the way they keep churning out more and more stuff, like he's got to be swamped constantly with new projects and new ideas. So, yeah.
It's amazing.
But that's the great thing about token making is that there's always more content, which means there's always more tokens that need to be made to match the content.
Yeah, that's very true. So how did you, I guess, so your necessity was just because you wanted to play with your brother kind of thing?
Yeah, we grew up together. We've been playing since, I think I went to middle school, which we lived in a very small town. So our middle school was actually the same as high school. It was all one building. And I had a friend whose older brother had found D&D and was playing, and my friend was like, "Oh my God," he's like, you gotta like learn this stuff with me. He's like, my brother and his friends are playing this game where they're going on adventures and they're fighting monsters and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that sounds awesome. So we got a couple of at the time we had to actually drive into a bigger town and then go to like the Sears catalog store. Because there was no online shopping, there was none, there wasn't even a big hobby shop nearby. So we had to order stuff through the Sears catalog and have it delivered to us. And I think we ordered the game Dungeon, and I think it was the Red Box edition. And when we got that, like I immediately just sat down and read through that 3 or 4 times. And then, we started, just me and a couple friends and, my brother would just, set aside almost an entire weekend and just sit in one room and go through these adventures and stuff. And, it was great. And so we'd always played, for years and years and years. And then I moved out to Ohio to go to college. And, I played with friends out here, but I knew my brother back there was still, in that small town and didn't have a whole group of people to game with. So I'm just like, I wish there was a way we could just play together. And, and eventually I ran into Fantasy Grounds, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. There's chats, there's these maps and stuff. And then it was just a matter of just making the creatures and the characters so that you had like a full, the whole thing in front of you kind of. And yeah, but that's what started it. My need to, play with my brother long distance.
That's really cool. What was your, what was it like when you, I guess, how were you able to say, okay, I can make a living out of this? Because I know there's a point in where it's a hobby and then it switches over to a profession.
Yep. Well, it had worked out that my daughter was born 2003, and I lost my job because the place I was working at closed roughly the same time. And my wife's worked full time. She's super smart, beautiful, awesome. So I'm like, well, what if I just stayed home, helped raise the kids, and just did freelance work? Because I was a freelancer anyway. She's like, yeah, sure. So a couple of years after that, freelancing was off and on, but I had some good stuff. But I started working on the tokens, and I would spend hours and hours and hours each day, developing these tokens. And, when I first started selling them, I'd make like maybe $100 a month, maybe. And my wife looked at me and she's like, why do you work so hard making tokens? She's like, you're not making any money doing it. And I'm like, trust me. I'm like, eventually this is going to be huge. Like it'll be something. And, and I had some ups and downs, and there was times when I'm just like, yeah, maybe this isn't worth it. But I was driven to do it because it was not a whole lot of people were doing it at that time. In fact, there was only a couple that I can even think of that were doing it. And I'm like, there has to be a market for this eventually. There has to be more people that want to see their character brought to life, or that monster, attacking them, and they want to be able to see it. And I'm just like, I'm just going to keep doing this. I was doing work for professional, package design and other work, but I'm like, when I had free time, I'm like, I'm getting something new. I'm just going to go through the book. I'm going to find a creature. I'm going to be like, that's going to be awesome, and I'll draw it. Or, for whatever game I'm playing, if I need to run across the monster, like, I want to have something for that. And so it just took time, and things were building. It was very slow, but things were getting better. Like, every month I'd make a tiny bit more. I'd have like a couple extra commissions and stuff. And, eventually I ran into the other VTT that was just launching, and it was a huge boost to sales. And so
one
at that point,
must not be named.
Yeah, that other one. And at that point, it was like, I could actually do this for a living, and I could phase out the other work I was doing to make money and just focus on just making tokens. And that was around 2012. And so I kind of did both. I still kept, my day job, and then I worked on tokens as much as possible. And eventually, around 2015 or so, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to phase out all the work and just focus on just tokens and just making tokens. And it just worked out that it was feasible at that point. All of the virtual tabletops were getting a lot more attention. And so, commissions went up and sales went up, and I'm just like, oh, this is nice. Oh, I didn't even realize you're showing off my stuff. I talk with my eyes closed.
That's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that's, And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. A lot of people need to get into virtual tabletop gaming. And I was ahead of the curve by just doing it.
Right. Did you happen to try other types of art? I mean, related to the industry?
I've always, whatever I do, whatever people need, but, like, I do some logos for people. I've done actually quite a few logos that people I don't even think know that I've done them. Graphics for people. I've done some 2D illustrations, though not a lot, and stuff. But it always just came back to overhead stuff, because I'm like, I gotta have a niche. Like, I can do maps, sure, but there's a lot of great map makers. I could do pogs, but I'm not great at it, and there's a lot of people that can do it. I'm like, I've been doing overhead tokens, and I'm pretty good at it. And I'm like, I should just focus on just that aspect. And if one day nobody wants overhead tokens, then, I'll find something else to do, like make shelves. But overhead tokens it's my focus, and it's the one thing I want to be one of the best at doing.
I hear you. So let's get on to Jan.
Hello.
So Jan, same sort of format. What got you started in gaming and into tokens?
So when you asked me this question, you sent me a little questionnaire beforehand about things we're going to talk about.
Yep.
I had to do some digging because I want to be accurate. So I tried to figure out where did it all start.
Yeah.
And I think it all started around 1992 for me. I was about 10 years old then, and my older cousin brought in a board game called Hero Quest.
Oh, I know that one. Yes.
I had no idea what it was. I didn't understand the rules at all because I was just a young kid. But I was completely fascinated by the fact that you could populate these rooms with little miniatures, and you could add little furniture, and then you would roll die and you would fight the monsters. I don't think I properly played it at all, but I just was fascinated by the fact that you could make your own little dungeon like that. And after that, I was just really a gamer, a computer gamer. I played a lot of Diablo 1. I played an MMORPG fanatically called Ultima Online. You know that one?
Yep, I remember.
I love that one. It's the predecessor of World of Warcraft and all the big ones.
Yes.
And then when I was about 19 years old, my grandmother passed away, and she gave me like this tiny little inheritance. And my parents told me I could spend it on anything I want, but it should be something that was memorable. And then we went to this fantasy store in The Hague, which was really, really rare back then to have anything with content related to fantasy and Lord of the Rings and things like that. And then I bought Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition books. I never played it, the 3rd edition, for at least another 5 years, but I loved the books. I got the player manual, the DM's guide, and a monster manual, and I read through it a lot. And then when I was about 24 years old, I started playing my first game, Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. That's how I got started with the role playing. And then with the token making, that's a bit of a different story. I think I'm a 2nd generation token maker. The other two in here, they are 1st generation OG, and I really look up to both of you. And in about December 2014, I figured out, I checked my first token EXIF data. I was playing on the other VTT, and I was using tokens from someone called Devin Night. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I could just make a token that looked exactly like the character that I wanted? And I already loved graphic design a little bit. I loved playing with Photoshop. So I tried to design my own character. If you want, I can share my screen and show you the first token that I've ever made.
Sure.
In the style of Devin Night.
Okay.
All right.
So if you guys want to switch over to
this is the first one I've ever made.
Pretty cool.
It looks. I think I used a poser program, or at one point I was even screenshotting video games to get top-down poses of characters. And then the second character that I made was this one, and then I made a monster at one point.
That's a pretty risky perspective on the sword there.
Yeah, I know. You can hardly see that it's a sword. But I was doing my own homebrew campaign in a desert-themed setting, and I needed some desert-type characters. And that's when I made a pack of characters, and I thought, hey, why not try to post it on a marketplace for a VTT and see if it sells? And I made my first pack of tokens called Desert Warriors. And that's how I got started in the industry in 2014.
Well, interesting enough, I actually purchased some of you guys' packs before they were on the Fantasy Ground store from the other websites.
Right.
Yep. Okay. And then I bought them again in Fantasy Grounds.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because I'm so disorganized that I have so many tokens that I don't even know what I have. It's so embarrassing. It's like, oh yeah, I already bought those like 5 years ago or something like that. Like, I'll come across a folder that I had all the tokens in, and I'm like, what? I already bought those like years ago. So you guys are probably double dipping on me, or you don't even know it. But that's my own problem. Yeah, that's my problem. That actually, I don't mind it. Actually, I'm getting a lot of good use out of these. And, the whole idea of this show wasn't so much, not just a big commercial, but, it's kind of get you guys together and be able to talk. And that was important to me when I thought about doing this, is, kind of get you guys together.
Awesome.
I don't think there's a lot of times where you guys get to do this. And
Maybe I haven't spoken to Darkwoulfe before, but what's funny enough, since Devin and I both started our Patreon, we've connected our Discords.
Oh, cool.
And Devin streams about at least twice a week, I think. And for the last 2-3 months, we've been hanging around with the same group of people, like 4 or 5 big Devin Night fans in his stream channel, and just chatting. So spoken with Devin a lot. We're even thinking about talking about whenever he comes to Europe, he comes and visits some of the Patreons, and if I ever go to a big conference in the US, I'm going to visit Devin. So.
Cool. Yeah. That's good. That's exactly what I would like to know, because or at least hear about, because that's really cool. That's bringing everything together. It's kind of solidifying, all your influences together, and getting to know the people who are buying stuff from you and all that stuff. It's very important for this to happen, and then it'll make that connection to Fantasy Grounds too. So it's really, really cool to hear that, and I'd like to see Darkwoulfe get out there a little more if he can. I remember I picked on him earlier. I don't remember when it was. It was right when Unity was coming out. I was bugging him about that. He probably had something going on, but I kind of...
No, I did. No.
Oh, well, I just said, hey,
I'm very good at starting a pack and maybe get like 50% done and squirrel.
Well, I hadn't seen anything from you in a while, and I know that you were one of the earliest users or people that run that Fantasy Ground. So I kind of reached out to you on Facebook, and I said, hey, you might want to get some stuff going with Smiteworks, because they got Unity's out now. And it wasn't long after that I saw your token packs were added into some of the freebies that come with the base program.
Yeah, and then, I got a pretty good relationship with Doug. Like I said, he was the first guy to let me get on his marketplace.
It's really cool.
Because I used to go to Gen Con like every other year.
Mm-hmm.
I've slowed down quite a bit.
Yeah, it's hard to keep going.
What is Gen Con? Gen Con is like for RPG only, or it's for...
all tabletop games, I think. And cosplay too. It's a big convention here in the US.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have a sample on the screen share there of just one of each type from each author. And the map in the background is from Map Hatter Chris. But the GTW. But those the way it contrasts against the image is important. I think when we play these games and we're just kind of DMing, we don't really think about the visual aspects as much, just other than throwing a token down, but when you have a map that's super colorful and busy, and then you have a beautiful top-down token, sometimes those get washed out in the background because of just color schemes. So like the colors and the pixels, the resolution, all that stuff adds up. So one of the things that I had requested from other authors or other artists is to have a base made for these. So most people are pretty capable. They can make their own base. And that's what I've done. Is I'll take one of these like tokens and I'll throw a base under it. Semi-transparent,
like an actual miniature. Huh?
Yeah. I'd throw a little beveled, like flat base, like a miniature. Yeah, and then I'd put a semi-transparency on it so I could still see the ground underneath. And it kind of gives that contrast. I used a light gray color. And it gives that contrast, so when it moves across the map, you can still see what's going on, because I know that depending on the environment, it washes out quite a bit, especially if you're not zoomed in like I am now. And that's one request that I had made for some other token artists. I said, hey, can you put bases on those? And he's like, yeah. And I asked him if he's going to charge me more money for it. He said, no, I can do it. It's pretty simple. So
I've tried it, but I feel it's not necessary too much for my style of tokens. I understand exactly what you're saying, because the problem with extreme realism is, if you ever seen a drone shot of a place, because we're not used to seeing things from that perspective, it becomes very unclear of what is what. So that's why I really prefer maps to be super colorful and not too detailed. There's this fine line. Like, if you try to do hyper-realism, you're gonna lose a lot of imagination, actually, because if everything is already exactly portrayed on the screen, people use their imagination a lot less. They use their imagination the most if you just have a black and white grid with some lines, but there's also a lot of flavor that a map can add that not everyone can describe as vividly, or would take too long to describe. So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just thinking. I really thinking that's it's like a personal choice type thing, but also, a necessity. It just depends on what you're doing, what you're playing, I guess, and what kind of maps you have.
Yeah, I always feel like the map needs to be exactly what I have in mind, or close to what I have in mind. And if it isn't, it's going to be difficult to make it different in the description otherwise, if you know what I mean. If I start describing it to my players, they need to be able to imagine something similar that I have in my mind.
So the headless characters, I get a kick out of those. I've seen. I don't know if you, Jan, do you do the headless thing where you can swap heads out?
No, but tokens? I do make a lot of variations, but I don't have ones completely without heads.
Yeah. So that's an interesting move for token makers. I think that it does add that flexibility, so you can kind of mix and match them. Like if you had a knight and you wanted to be male or female, you could do something like that, or something that makes it more obviously different. The other thing is, the variations of tokens. There's different colors, male, female, or whatever the representation that you want. When you guys take commissions, do you typically pick and choose which ones you want to grab, or do you have a queue, or how does that work?
I don't know. Am I the only one that takes commissions? Darkwoulfe, do you take commissions?
I take commissions, but it's not a landslide of requests.
Okay.
And Jan, I don't remember if you took commissions or if you were too busy.
Well, I did it at the start, but then I found that people were either asking for stuff that were so strange that it would not be interested for the bigger audience, if you know what I mean, or so specific, or it would be stuff which I would send references of stuff that's very heavily copyrighted, and I didn't want to get into trouble. So what I basically say to my patrons is, if I make a token and you see that with a little change, it could be representing your character a bit more, I'm fine to take a little job to make those little changes and make a little variation on a token as well. But I don't do complete commissions of complete new tokens. I do, however, let people fill in polls on my Patreon, where they can just say, I want to see more forest creatures, or I want to see more big bad evil guys, and then I allow people to post inspiration in the Discord, and I pick some from those.
That's great. I like that. you guys allow people to vote for the patrons. That's one reason I sign up for patrons, is that I have that flexibility, especially at a certain pledge level. If I'm paying $10, $15, $20 a month, that's a good incentive to stick around, because there's not too many reasons to stick around generally. And that also helps with the hit and run people, where they'll sign up and get everything and then leave. So when you have those vote type things, that helps with that a little bit. Let's see.
I don't worry too much about those hit and run people, to be honest.
No.
I mean,
they'll come back.
Yeah. For me, if people just stay around for a few months, like 3 or 4 months, and they want to support some other patron, fine.
Yeah.
I don't worry.
Yeah, I haven't had too many problems with token makers. Like, they're usually prolific. Like, they'll put out at least 5 to 10 tokens a month. That's a lot of work for 30 days, especially if you got other things going on in the middle. So I don't know how you guys maintain that, but I know a couple other people that are doing content, and it's kind of a struggle to keep up with it.
I do about 5 to 10 a week.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So are you guys working on any projects that are kind of cool, that are outside of Fantasy Grounds, that are like part of a book? Or you don't have to tell us about it necessarily, but are you working on a board game, or are you working on a cool other platform or anything like that? Nope. Okay. I'll take that as a no.
Well, I always have the plan that at one point I want to do my own Kickstarter, and I want to make my own campaign setting. At one point.
Have you thought about working with another person, or do you want to keep that all your own?
No, definitely. There's been some very successful Kickstarters. So what's really nice, and one thing I really want to mention, is that the creators community, the people in the RPG industry, are super cooperative and super helpful to each other. There's even a couple of Discords where some of the creators get together. And because of that, there's been some very big and very successful projects. One I can mention, for example, is Heliana's Guide to Monster Hunting, a Kickstarter that reached, I think, 1.5 million. And it's just creators that met on one of those Discords and that started working together and made a big, beautiful project because they combined their skills.
That's great. I like the cooperative aspect. I know this market is not easy. It's very competitive, especially tokens. But when you can get in on a project like that, that's phenomenal. I'm glad that you guys are all kind of in the same, I wouldn't say exactly the same thing, but very similar start, very similar approach. I mean, you guys have differences for sure. I can see it in the art style, and obviously use different techniques for creating your content. And one thing I noticed, Devin, that you do a stream once in a while or every week to show how you work.
Yeah. Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, it's kind of I kind of need the energy from the people that show up to really bust through the work. So the stream has been great. I've gotten a lot of great regulars that show up, including Jan. And when some random person shows up, it's kind of just like that little boost of like, hey, here's a new person, and I need to show off a little bit, sort of. It just makes me work a little bit faster, and I work pretty fast as it is, but when I get that energy going, and I'm hyper focused on creating something, like I can kind of move pretty fast and create stuff. So, when I get to oohs and ahs, like that's when I really start kicking up the techniques and stuff. And so I love the stream because it keeps me constantly motivated to keep going. And occasionally, I'm forced to learn new tricks. Jan shows up. He's like, He's like, how did you do that? And I'm like, this is how I do it. And he's like, you're really old. There's new ways to do that, which is much better and faster and gives you more control. I'm like, oh, well, what's it called? And now I got to like watch, videos about it and stuff to like figure out like new techniques. And so having people show up and either challenge the way I think about things or, just reinforce that they like what I'm doing, that it's kind of important as an artist to be getting that feedback or getting that little push to like keep you moving and constantly like going a little bit further than you did, last year and stuff like that. So the stream's great, and it's part of my Patreon, but if anybody who wants to just come and look at the stream and stuff, I can always grant people access to just that level of, so they can get in and watch the stream and stuff. Because I just love having people show up and talk to me while I'm working and stuff.
Do you stream it live on Twitch, or is it just in Discord?
So let's forget how old I am again. I do some Twitch. I wasn't hugely successful. So now I'm mostly just streaming in Discord. The thing that killed me with Twitch is that I couldn't talk to people while I was working. And I would have some people on Discord that were reading the comments and then letting me talk, but it wasn't as organic as a Discord chat with people there where we can talk and I can stream my Photoshop as I'm working and we can go back and forth and talk, and they can immediately be like, oh, what was that button you just pushed, or how did you just do that? I'm like, oh, this is this and this is this. In Twitch, it felt more like I was just teaching a class to people who couldn't talk to me, and it wasn't as fun. So yeah,
I understand.
Discord's so much cooler.
Yeah, it's a lot more organic, like kind of like what we're doing now.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we have the stuff going in the background. I mean, there's probably a few people out there watching, but the experience that they're going to get outside is going to be different than what they're going to get in here. So,
right.
Yeah, I understand. So I want to open up a couple questions here for the people that are participating. Anybody in this channel other than the three artists have any questions in regards to tokens or artwork or anything like that? A tough crowd.
I got a question.
Sure. What's up?
When you did your animated set, how hard or easy did you consider it? Because it almost broke me to animate.
Well, first of all, I've gone through 3 different animators. I've been promising myself that I would learn animation, but I don't know if I got the brain power to do it. The first guy, Jeffrey something or other, did the first pack and did an amazing job. But he wasn't super excited by the lack of sales. And I told him, I'm like, you do more than one pack and it grows. People get accustomed to your work and they want to see more. But if you just do one pack, it's not going to pan out. But he moved on because he had other stuff to do. So he moved on. So I hired another guy and he was doing great. He did 3 packs before he ran into some health issues. So he was out. And then I got approached by the most recent guy, Roche, who's in Greece. And he just contacted me out of the blue. And he was using, I think, Maya, which is a 3D app. But he could wrap the 2-dimensional image. And if you look at the most recent sets, the animation is amazing because it creates the illusion of 3-dimensional objects out of 2-dimensional art. And he did, I think, 1 or 2 packs, which were just phenomenal. The Cosmic Horrors, which is just so cool to look at, and the Big Nasty Beasts. And then, of course, because he's talented, he got a job, and so he's super busy, so he doesn't have time to animate. So I'm constantly finding people that want to animate and then get busy and don't have time to animate. So, but animation sales are good. It's just I need more packs animated and stuff. And I think Jan just hired a girl to animate, or a woman to animate some packs for him.
Yep. I tried animation myself, but it's a lot of work. It's like a whole new discipline that you need with a whole new program and a whole new way of thinking. So I did some animated Dragonborn at one point. And if I do that, I just don't have time to make new tokens. And it's like Devin is saying, the sales are from the top-down tokens, and if animated tokens are going to be a big thing, we need more packs out there so people will start combining them, because if you want to have animated tokens, you want to have all your characters on the map animated and not just one or two. I had my cave creatures animated, which is actually going to be a gift to my patrons, because I will be on holiday in August and I made a little care package for them.
It's pretty cool.
That's great. You guys are smarter than me, because I was trying to crank it out myself, and I think I broke my brain, and then I released the first pack, and then I had a second pack. I don't even know where it's at. I made a video of it, so I know I did it. It wasn't just a dream, but I have no idea where the files are.
Yeah, that's one of the things I did early on, good and bad, is that I've tried to keep a hold of everything I've ever created in 4 or 5 different formats. And I'm pretty good at finding most stuff, but there's times people be like, hey, where's this token at? And I'm like, I don't remember making that token. I have no idea where that is.
Right.
And yeah.
But you have one of your Discord members who is basically your personal secretary, and he knows where to find everything that you've ever created.
Yeah, I got one guy, I'll just call him out by name, Crazy Ivan from Russia. You show up on my Patreon, and I'm going to list this as a perk. If you show up on my Patreon and you're like, I need to know where this token is, he'll be like, it's in that pack. It was released 20 years ago. It was the first pack he ever did. And stuff. So he's got it all cataloged, but then he'll be like, but it's also not very good. So he's like, you can use this one from this pack, which was made 2 years ago, which is the better choice. Or he'll be like, Devin just needs to remake this one because it sucks.
You guys bring up a very interesting point. Go ahead, Marswhip.
One of the questions that was recently put in regards licensing. I want to know how much that comes into play for usage, and if there was any thought on Creative Commons in some of those.
You mean people that want to use the tokens in their own projects?
Well,
or making copyrighted artwork into tokens.
I'm paraphrasing the questions.
Right.
So, Gonzo, why don't you explain what you're asking, if you don't mind? Maybe you can't. You formulated the question, how much do you use license come into play when you're putting your packs together? Any thoughts on open content licenses such as Creative Commons?
I think those are actually two questions. I think if we're talking about making tokens from copyrighted artwork, there's a very fine line, and it's also a bit of a gray area, and it's also a bit of a trial and error, which is not very good if you're an independent artist, because you don't want to get cease and desist orders here and there. But there's just some companies that are much more lenient when you create tokens or derived content from their artwork. For example, Wizards of the Coast and Paizo have a few very simple rules, and if you follow them, you're allowed to make all the tokens that you want. But there's other companies, I won't name and shame, but if you make even something that looks slightly like a product they own, you get your email inbox filled with lawyer emails. And the other thing is, if people, I've got quite some people that want to use my tokens for their own projects, and especially in the creator community, there's a lot of people that write their own stories or they make their little own adventure modules, and they just want to use the tokens to represent their characters. And I've got a sort of like a creative license for those people. They sign up for the highest tier on Patreon and stick for certain amounts we agree on, and they can use all the tokens that they want in any of their projects as long as they don't sell the tokens individually.
Yes, that seems to be some of what's going on here. Regarding the, I guess, open content licenses, I'm guessing more asking about, I guess, considering the new GPL as part of that, like included in other works for, I guess, I would assume personal use, since you'd want probably non-commercial, unless you're actually getting royalties.
Yeah. So I've licensed my stuff out to some people that have done print products and other people have done digital products. And it's almost a case-by-case basis. I know I've been contacted with people that want to use them for like an animated game on an iPad. And a lot of times I'll be like, just go ahead and use them until you get like ready to actually release a commercial product. Because they need placeholders, they need to see if they can make it work, they need to see, and I'm just like, go ahead, because I've run into a lot of people that have the ambition, but eventually fall short of actually releasing the commercial product. And I don't want to be the stumbling block that they have to spend so much money to get started just to like build a very basic for show and tell purposes or to sell it to somebody. So I'm like, yeah, go ahead. I'm like, whatever you picked up from my store, just go ahead and use it. When you get close to releasing a commercial product, then we can talk about, a very fair, because I don't want to stop people from being able to like make cool stuff. But with the print guy, I have a print guy in England right now who's printing up like 350 discs with my artwork on them. And he's releasing that as a set. And me and him have talked and gone back and forth on price. And again, like I want to make it affordable for him because I know printing stuff is hugely expensive. So, do I want to get noticed? Yeah, I want people to know that I made the artwork, and I want a little bit of compensation for the actual artwork, but I also want people to be able to use my artwork in as many products as they can. Because I think it benefits everybody if people have access to it for, whatever format they want to see it in. So I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about commercial licenses of, stuff.
Yeah, I know at least 3 or 4 people that have already worked with you, Devin, in that fashion. So you're pretty fair, and I see your work everywhere. So that is kind of like a good way to build your resume or your exposure without all the stipulations and the heartache.
Yeah, a lot of people when they're starting up, they can't afford to like buy finished art. I'm just like, use it as placeholder until you get to that point where you're going to be successful, and then we can talk.
Yep.
And you pay me $1 billion.
That's right.
Then I'm like, well, you've used my art, now you owe me so much money.
Just like you'll be talking to my
and very chill about that stuff. I like that about you, and it really shows in the community that you're building as well. That people like, if you look at Devin's Discord, there's people that are making combinations of his tokens and things like that. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's another free perk I need to list, is that custom tokens. Like, there's some great people out there that do some awesome kit bashing, and if they post them on my Patreon, like I'm like, that's awesome because everybody gets access to them. You know, now if somebody were to kit bash an entire set and try to sell it as their own work, you know, that's problematic because I can't let people just do that because, you know, I release the headless people and I release head packs. And if somebody just, you know, mix and match those and then we're like, hey, I made a whole bunch of tokens, I want to make money off it. I'm like, well, you can't do that. That's all my work and stuff. But
exactly.
if somebody wants to do a little bit of that and release them to the other people in my Patreon, I'm like, go for it. I'm like, everybody, I mean, there's so many variations. Like, I can't cover all of them. And if you do a great job and other people get the benefit who are Patreons, I'm like, that just makes me look better. And so I'm all for that.
How would you guys feel about having somebody make scenes for you? Like, for instance, if you have a new token pack coming out and you have preview images or something that's done, but you don't have the whole set done. Kind of like with the background, you know, the almost like in action, like making a little movie scene. Doesn't necessarily have to be animated. It would be nice if it was animated, but it could be a static image. But basically, the benefit or the usage of this would be for one, you can use it in social media, you can put it on your website, you could do whatever you wanted with it. You know, to have these scenes, and you'd probably have one or two per pack, or maybe just one. You know,
That's great.
I have a friend who tries to every month create a new scene for my website, my blog and stuff, and she does a great job. It doesn't seem to actually, it doesn't seem to really like generate any real, any more awareness and stuff, and it's probably because I'm horrible at the social media. Like, if she were to do that and I were to make sure it was thrown in 5 different places, it might be great. I do love the fact that she makes these scenes and they're very enjoyable and fun. But yeah, I don't release packs as much as I used to. Like, but yeah, I think it's a cool idea. I think it's great for promoting to have that. I just, you know, I can either make tokens or I can make a scene with tokens, and having somebody else do it is great. So if somebody wants to do that, more power to them and stuff. Even if it's, you know, like, I'll make some extra tokens for you, which, you know, I tend to like trade services more than money, because I'm like, hey, if you can do that for me, like, I'll make some extra tokens for you this month and stuff.
Right.
It's just a little bit easier, but yeah.
Yeah, that seems pretty fair. Dark, go ahead. You say something, Jan?
Oh yeah, I made an arrangement with a couple of cartographers where I can use their maps as a background for my tokens for promotional purposes, and whenever I make an image like that, I send it to them as well, and they can use it as well.
Nice.
So, yeah,
that's great.
Another way of collab.
So I was looking at earlier. We were looking at Riley's tokens, and he has you know, the revamp that he's working on his from his older ones, and then I noticed these newer Pog looking things. Darkwoulfe, I kind of like that idea that you've taken the image, kind of rotated it, threw it in a Pog format, and that's in case, to me, if I had a Pog for every top down, I would be happy, because there's some cases where you need it and some cases where you don't.
People requested those quite a bit when I started making tokens, but early on, my tokens look good from the top, but front facing, their positions are horrific. So yeah, I'm trying something new with the Pogs, just to, you know, from now on out, I'm gonna try to do a front facing and a top down, just so, you know. And I'm not the greatest graphic artist in the world. I don't have any training in it. I'm just feeling around in the dark. So I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, I thought that was really neat. I didn't realize it at first, and I got to looking closer at it. I'm like, hey, that's the same token, but it's rotated, and, you know, it's more of almost a 2D, perspective because of the way you have it kind of hanging outside of the borders and stuff. So I thought that was in the shadowing and stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool. Unfortunately, a lot of people are zoomed so far out that they're never going to see all those beautiful details. And I think that's one problem that all of you suffer from in virtual tabletop space anyways, is you're still not quite there yet. I mean, you can, like in Fantasy Grounds, I can zoom in, but most people can't play that way the whole time. That's the problem with that is they need the real estate. Even if you have, separate screens, you still have to zoom out sometimes, and that's when you lose the map and the details on the tokens. Because zoomed in like I am now, you could see them pretty nicely, but typically I'm not zoomed in that far when I'm playing with them. So that's on
the software as well, because some each VTT has their own what do you call them, a properties list that you have to oblige on. Like some VTTs allow tokens to be 200 pixels by 200 pixels. Other VTTs allow tokens to be 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. It really depends on the software that you use. I make my tokens nowadays 2,000. Let me see. 2,240 by 2,240, but in most VTTs they have to be reduced drastically.
Yes.
I haven't started getting that large yet,
but 200 by 200 to me seems like a good number, like regardless, because it's not too small where you can't see it on your computer, but it's not huge. I think that's a fair number to start with anyways. Fantasy Grounds has some limitations to that, or at least suggestions. I say that, for a small to medium creature, you want around 100, large creatures 200, and anything above that like 300. That was when Classic was around. Imagine those numbers could probably be a little higher, but it also depends on how you have the map scaled and how much scaling you're doing on the virtual tabletop. So that's part of it too.
And the number of tokens you're going to be displaying at once.
Yes.
Yeah, I crashed Classic Fantasy Grounds quite a bit.
Oh yeah. My library alone kills Fantasy Grounds. I have to go through it and strip all that stuff out because I got like 20 different campaigns with, probably got duplicates of similar tokens all over the place.
It's fun to do though.
Oh yeah. It's part of being a collector and a freak when it comes to that. Because I really like cartography and tokens. It's probably one of my biggest things for any game system. I love maps, and I miss the old box sets, and they had the little standees, and then the little cutouts that you used to be able to glue together. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I missed about the older days of gaming, was this little cardboard. They still have that, but it's just not the same. It doesn't have the same feel to it, and it's harder to find those.
3D printing and resin models.
That's right.
Which is awesome as well.
Yeah, it is. It's a good evolution, but I still kind of miss the old cardboard cutouts, and spending hours with an X-Acto knife and going through all that. I think we're getting close. So anything else you guys want to talk about?
I've prepared some images. Maybe it's interesting to see my process.
Sure, yeah.
If you want.
Yeah,
so if you look at my stream, I will show the process that I use. I've made some steps. So the first step that I do is I prepare a pose in Daz Studio, Daz 3D, just like Darkwoulfe. And I just make a camera that views it top down. And once I got a pose like that, I render it out, import it into Photoshop, and start sketching on top of it. So, for example, this is one of my recent characters. It's a man sitting in a wheelchair. this is the first step where you can see the DAS pose that I've rendered it out, put into Photoshop, and then I start with the line art. Sometimes I start with a bit more of a sketch, but a lot of times it's just a line art. Then once I've got the line art in, I start filling all the different areas with flat colors. And then you can see you start getting more of a token. After that, I do shadows. And then you're getting already close to a final result. But to make it pop a little bit more, I had it's a quicker layer of highlights.
Mm-hmm.
And once I've got those in, I add a drop shadow and I add some texture to some of the objects. So, for example, you can see there's a little bit of texture on the clothing.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And then, yeah, this is 2000 by 2000, and as you can see, you can get quite close and still have a lot of detail. Nobody's going to be zoomed in that much. Most people play like this skill, right? So, where did we go? I lost him. I lost my guy. 1 second. Most people play something like this, right? Or even smaller, like this. But I don't know. I just feel... Also, Devin once told me we need to prepare for the future because maybe in 10 years they're going to be playing on virtual reality supercomputers and they have 10,000K HD things, and we need to have the tokens already for those as well.
Yeah, that
you can
texture
always reduce
helps.
large files down, but you can't turn little tiny files into bigger, higher res ones easily.
Yep. I see what you're saying.
Yep. True.
So that's my process. I will go through them one more time for the people that joined in, because I heard some blip, blip, blip of people joining in. So here's the imported DAS one, just a reference. For monsters and stuff, it's a little bit more difficult, but a lot of shapes can be started from a humanoid figure. Then I started drawing on top and just putting some clothing on. Then I add my flat colors. Then I add my shading, the highlights that pop, and then some texture and a drop shadow, and that's a finished token.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And it usually takes about 5 to 6 hours for me to draw one token. I know Devin is a lot faster than me, and he makes at least as great as tokens, which is interesting. Makes me think about if I should change some of my way of working.
I don't think so. I think it's just it's a matter of time. I don't know why I move so fast. Probably because I've been doing it for 17 years, and a lot of these things are just reflex for me. But I just move fast. I don't know why.
Yeah,
it might be impatience. It might just be that I just want to see what it looks like when it's done, and I just got to get there fast.
Yeah, but it's crazy that you still have like the same, at least the same amount of quality. I think especially your color, the way you use color, because I use flat colors first, but you use a lot of gradations and just little blobs here and there, blah, 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 blah. You work so quick. You work much more organically than I do. I work much more systematically. Yeah, which I really envy. I want to be able to work like that as well.
Well, much of that does come down to optimizations in workflow. So
there is some of that. I do have certain Photoshop actions which get me to certain points faster. But my technique is it's similar. Jan is where I was like maybe 10 years ago, where I just threw in a flat color and I was done. But nowadays, and maybe because my eyes are going bad, like I really like to throw in just a little bit of color, like in the yellow shirt there, I'd put like a little bit of brown and some splotches, and I'd move, and I'd, like maybe there's a tear over here, or maybe he had to use like a different cloth. to like fix part of his shirt, you know, and I'll do little stuff like that a lot more, just because it's on the fly. I'm making the character, and I'm developing his why did he choose this particular shirt, or is this his favorite vest, you know, and how does he sew it up and stuff, and I'll just throw that in while I'm working, just to keep it exciting while I'm working on it.
Yeah, even if you think that people won't see that, they will. You zoom in, you'll see it.
Yeah.
Because I've asked other token artists the same kind of question, like why didn't you add any details, like a rip in the shirt or something like that? And like, well, you know, in most cases people won't notice, they won't care. I don't buy that. I think that if I saw two tokens side by side and one had a lot more detail, I'm gonna like that one. Now, am I going to see it and then, you know, every time I'm playing? Probably not, but I like that you guys are kind of coming together. And Darkwoulfe, I hope you get with them, hang out with these dudes for a while.
Yeah, I'll send you an invite. You can come hang out in my Discord channel anytime you want to.
I'm a Discord baby, but
that's not a problem.
It looks like somebody just tried to log in as me. I was like, what? Luckily, I got that 2-factor authentication.
But yeah, that's really cool, you guys. I'm glad that you guys were able to show up, and that that you guys help us celebrate this Founders Day. This is our 5th year. Like I said, we've never done a token symposium. I'm wondering if I want to do a separate one that's not back to back with a bunch of other events and get a few more artists. So I don't know if you guys would be interested in that. Maybe in a year or two, I'll do another token symposium, but it'd be a lot more produced and polished, and all the images will be right and all that stuff. So I kind of, this one was my first one, so I wasn't sure how it was going to go. It was okay. The dialogue was great. That's what I'm more wanting, is for you guys to talk. But the visual aspect of it, I was hoping to do a little better with that. But I think with different ideas of how to present the data and how to show it in the stream, I think I can do a better job with that. So if you guys would like to come back in a year or two, and we'll revisit this idea, and maybe you have a couple other token artists you guys would like to talk to, because I don't necessarily like throwing just a bunch of people together. I kind of like when you guys kind of know each other, and you're not fighting and all that stuff. That's what I'm looking for.
Wait, people fight on here?
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Competition.
Yeah,
they act. Darkwoulfe.
No. When I first found Jan and was looking at his tokens, I'm like, dude, this dude is just he's ripping me off. I'm like, I don't like this guy. and then he came out of the blue and contacted me. I'm like, what kind of nerve does this guy have contacting me after he's like ripping off my style? And then we started talking. I'm like, you know what? He just seems like a nice guy. I'm like,
it is true. It's not like, I mean, you were the first one. Oh, go ahead.
I'm like, he didn't set out to rip me off. He set out to like do his own thing. He just was using me as like that jumping off point. But like when I look at Jan's stuff now, I'm like, he does some amazing stuff. I'm like, some of his rendering, I'm like, I'm kind of jealous. I'm like, he does some really nice renderings of metals and stuff. And I'm like, he's his own guy now. He's got his own look and stuff. And since our styles are similar, like you can put them on the same map and it's not a problem, which just makes both of our tokens more popular because we cover more things.
Yeah, I did. I don't think ripping off is the right word, but I did definitely mimic you because I really loved your art, and I was like, okay, I wish I could do it like that, and I need a character that looks like this, but I'm gonna try and see how he does it, and I'm gonna try it as well. And then I started selling tokens, and I was like, I'm actually selling stuff and taking sales away from Devin Night. I don't want that. Yeah, it was kind of, nowadays there's a whole bunch of token artists, but I was the first to wannabe Devin Night. And I did, however, say to Devin, I'm going to be your lifelong patron because I owe a lot to you. So no matter how long your Patreon is live, if it's going to be for another 50 years, I will still be a patron.
That's great.
You backed the right horse because there's no way I'm lasting another 50 years.
That's really sweet. I like that. And what's nice is you guys inspire each other, and that's kind of, that's what this gaming community is like. Is we want to help each other out, and getting you guys together was important to me. So my hat's off to all of you. And Darkwoulfe, we got to get you out of the dark. We got to get you out and about a little bit more.
If you like, I found a video of those animated tokens, which Fantasy Grounds doesn't support yet, but
Not
maybe
yet.
by the time I find them, it will. So
yeah, they'll get it going someday. I don't think it's a priority for them right now, but I definitely think they'll look at it.
If you want, I can share my screen and
sure. Let's take a look.
What might have been?
Yeah.
The could have, would have been.
Are these the goblins you did, or a different pack?
This is a pack of cultists and skeletons.
Oh, nice.
When you guys can see them.
Yeah, it's still loading.
Loading screen.
I don't know.
Let me rejoin.
Yeah, you got the permission, so it isn't that.
Can you restart it? Because I think it's...
Yeah, it's kind of stuck. Yeah, restart your live.